So a quick recap on last week. So last week was the first week of the watercolour project, and the idea was to just go over all the basics of watercolours. So it's a refresher for some of you. Some people it might be new things. But I find that with watercolours, I found that a lot of my students really aren't sort of mastering the very basics, and they're going a little bit too quick and not producing great results because of that. So what I did last week was I demonstrated just get the flat wash. So that was just a flat wash. And my suggestion was work small and go for a brush, perhaps that sort of size. And I use that just to get a nice flat wash. And once you're confident you can master that, then go on to perhaps an exercise such as something like one of these mountain scenes where you've got different bits with different tones. Like in the distance it's quite light tone, and then progressively getting darker as you come forward. So that was an image based on that. So that was last week's exercises. This week I wanted to go on to like a graded wash, which is what this is. So that was this morning. So going from slightly stronger colour to lighter colour. So I shall do that, and then after that I'm going to do a demonstration of something like this where you've got wet colours going into wet colours. So just getting those kind of wet in wet washes. So more time to washes. Right, so so for this one I'm just going to work small again. If you wanted to have a go at these little ones, I've got these few of these mounts, and you can make some little rectangles or go even smaller if you want. And that way you can get plenty of practice. So I've got 2 pots of water, one for washing brushes and the other for adding to the paint. And you're going to start with quite a strongish mix to start with. And I'll just use this purple that I've got in the palette anyway. And the thing is to just get it really nice and moist. You don't want paint that's half dry, otherwise it shows every brush mark. And sometimes you want to show the brush marks, you want sort of dry brush effect, but a lot of the time you want to be able to just, if it's something like a sky, you probably want it nice and even. So I'm going in with just really loading that up. Just go back, and then as it comes down, I'm just going to slightly thinner paint each time. So the idea is to just try and get this to look progressively lighter to work my way down. And then going again. So just using that bit there. And this I find really difficult. So, and then towards the end I'm just going to use whatever colour's left on the brush. And then it should just almost like go back down to nothing there. So I need bits of paint. So it's not, not perfectly graded, but the idea is sort of try and get something that goes from dark to light. So that's useful, say if you're painting skies or something like that. There's other exercises where you can use that technique. It probably would work a little bit easier if you use the flatter brush, and that way you could perhaps just go over and get the gradations a little bit more even. That's quite a good exercise, quite worth having a go at that. That's the first one, and I just keep using these bits of paper and using the back and reusing them. And then the next exercise, I'm thinking something like this, which is based on this photograph, and I've got...
You don't do wet and wet then?
Well, this one will be wet and wet, yeah. So it'll be a mixture. You could dampen the page a little bit first, and then and then you've got a bit more time to work. So yeah, this particular image is here if you want to choose that one. I've also got other sunset type images in here. They may be more complicated. I'll pick this one out because it's relatively simple. So what I suggest is have a go at this one and then, perhaps do that quite quickly and then go on to another one. So with this one, I'm going to go for a bigger brush this time. I think this is probably the one I feel most comfortable with, but it seems to be losing hairs, so I've got another one very similar that's slightly bigger. So I've got clean water there. It might be worth dampening this first. This particular easel is far too steep, so if you can have your border just a little bit of an angle. That'd be ideal. But once it gets this steep, that you'll find that the paint will very quickly drain down. I'm actually going to start with the orangey colours. So I've got some mixed here, and I'm going to mix a little bit more in me. So I've just got some nice orangey yellow here. Just put a block there. Just mix that in with what I've got. Having the paper down will just give me a little bit more time. So the idea is kind of work that in. I can work it into here a little bit, going further up. And that's not bad. Some of the photos have come out a little bit stronger, so the colour's a little bit stronger. But while that's still wet, I should be able to just keep working the paint. So I'll just wash that and dry it a little bit, and then go in for the purpley colour now. So I just use what I was using for the last one. So I just need to be careful that I don't. Yeah, so I'm just working that slightly into that area. Something like that. And it's probably a little bit too wet because it's draining down, so I'm going to try and drain some of that off a bit. I now want to make the colours a little bit stronger in that area, so I'll go back to this brush. And with this brush, just mix a little bit of red in with the yellow. And that way I can. So I'm kind of roughly following this, but it doesn't matter too much, as long as you've got a kind of impression of a sunset. And perhaps have some reds mixed in with that as well. Particularly here, it feels slightly redder. So once you've got some wet paint on, you don't want to make it too wet. So that this colour, I'm using a lot drier because I'm going into a wet surface. And if I put too much water with this, it will just kind of wash all the colour out. So you just got to be careful you don't get too wet, something like that. And then bring a few further up here, and then I'm also going to pop some of these stronger purpley colours in as well. And again, going a little bit stronger this time. Add a little bit of brown and black to that. But sort of up here. And then I can let those colours just mingle in. Like that. Let's just go back in with the yellows a little bit, not too wet though. Put a bit of that in there. And the idea then is let that dry, and then I can tackle the trees. If I wanted the trees to look a little bit softly blended, I could perhaps put some colour there. So I might just try that, but I won't go as dark as that. I'm just going to go a little bit more like a kind of reddy orange. So I'm thinking perhaps some wet in wet trees here, this one, and this one could be here. And then I might let that dry and then go back in with, once it's dry, with some other colour, some darker colours. So I think down here it's a little bit stronger and darker. So these could perhaps come up here. So that's working wet paint into wet paint. You get these lovely soft edges, blended edges. It's really ideal for sunsets, that sort of thing. And then I would let that dry completely. And then when I want to tackle the trees themselves, I've got one here that I started a bit earlier that, so just starting here. So I tend to work from one side and just work my way over. Because again, you want to make a nice darkish colour. The thing with watercolours is it's quite nice if you've always got a little bit of light peeping through. So that we're not, ideally don't use white paint. I think there is a bit of paint on there for some reason. But keep a little bit, so it's not completely dead black. It's still got a little bit of light radiating through. So it's more like purple with a bit of black, let's say. Maybe a little bit of brown and red too. So I've got a nice deep tone, and then I'll just work my way across. I tend to get the foliage of the trees first. In here. If you wanted, you could draw all the trees out beforehand, then you've got something to work to. I'm just sketching them as I go. Just trying to get an impression of these trees as I go. And then this bit at the bottom, I need to just pop that in quite quickly while it's still wet, so that I don't get hard edges. I just really want, you know, an impression of trees in the distance. And carrying on up here to these ones here. Again, it's easier for me to get all this kind of foliage at the top in. Some wiggly lines to suggest the tree canopy. And really, you know, what I want is, I want it to look like trees, but I want it also to look like a watercolour. I want to keep a sort of fresh, lively look to it. So, we were talking about photographs earlier, weren't we, and whether we want it to look like a photograph or not. You know, I want it to read as a tree really, but the sort of watercolours I like tend to be, it's quite lively looking paintings as well as looking like the subject. Probably needed it a bit darker down here really for this one. And then very quickly just sort of pop some, I've got plenty of colour mix, so I can just pop that in so that I don't get a drying, you know, like a harsh line of this bit joins to this bit. And if I wanted any bits a little bit darker, while it's still wet, I can put some, you know, perhaps a little bit darker in places, add a little bit of the black into that. And I'll get a slight variation in that, and that hopefully will keep that looking lively. That all good? Any questions? Anybody want to ask anything? For me, I think watercolours, you know, getting them looking good is just building up lots of experience. Really just get familiar with how wet, how dry the paint needs to be, how big a brush. It's quite a lot of thinking and planning out. Okay, thank you very much.